Hi, I'm Larry Gifford. I have Parkinson's disease. This is when life gives you Parkinson's. For the month of April, Parkinson's Awareness Month, we're releasing one episode each week. As we continue our third season focus around advocacy, we're talking with author, blogger of PDYs, and professor Allan Cole. I am attempting something new this episode. We're going to start with my interview of Allan, and then halfway through, Allan will interview me. You can see the video of Allan's interrogation on his blog site, pdys.com. Allan's 53. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's nearly 5 years ago. He and his wife have 2 teenage daughters, and they're coming up on their 30th wedding anniversary. Allan's a professor and academic dean in the Steve Hicks School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Austin. He's just out with a new book called Counseling Persons with Parkinson's Disease. I started our conversation asking about the new book.
It's written from a sort of dual perspective as one who has for many years been a teacher or educator of counselor types, and more recently as one who is living with Parkinson's. And the book is really sort of, half memoir and half sort of professional guidebook that is written not only for professional counselors, but really for, care partners and friends and family members who support those of us who live with Parkinson's.
What inspired you to write a book?
Well, I tell people, I don't play golf, and so I need to do something with my time. And I've always written a lot, as an academic and just someone who likes words and metaphors and images and scenes and someone who just tries to sort of contribute in that way. I also say to people, I write so that I know what I think and feel. And so that's part of it too, sort of getting it out, externalizing it, and then, understanding it in some new kinds of ways. But, Larry, I thought, again, this is something I could do to contribute to the community. We all have to find ways to make meaning with a disease like Parkinson's, I think. And part of my meaning making is, trying to use it for good and for something constructive. That affects people's lives in a positive way. And one of the opportunities I have by virtue of my experience and my interests and my platform is to write books and blog posts and other kinds of, things that hopefully people can read and think about and talk about and live better because of.
So this is great because I love it because anytime you can tap into your superpower, which yours is teaching people how to be counselors, and then apply it to your disease, is a win. That's what the PD Avengers are all about. Is you bring your strength to the table. Like not everybody has that power, that talent. So what is it about what you've learned through all these years of being a professor that then you can now apply to living with Parkinson's?
Yeah, well, as I say in the book, and as I say to many people when I talk about this, candidly, I was really good, I think, at helping counselor types, A, sort of identify their own experiences and feelings, and B, to help, those that they're working with to do that. And, wasn't terribly accomplished at doing that myself, right? So I was sort of the expert who could sort of advise, but not often integrate a lot of that into my own life. And, having Parkinson's has sort of forced me to do that. And as I talk about in the book, the first almost year of life after that diagnosis was a very difficult time. I was basically private about it. I mean, my wife and my doctors and 2 or 3 people very close to me knew about it. My children didn't know. My parents didn't know. Most of my network didn't know. And sort of that, sort of coming out of that painful experience and doing sort of an assessment, which, happens with this kind of experience, I decided that, well, maybe I have an opportunity to be not only a better sort of educator and mentor to students who are going to be working with folks with Parkinson's and lots of other, challenges in life, but, how might I model that better and lead with that better by virtue of being more open and being more vulnerable, being more candid, honest, publicly about this experience. And what I've found is that it's not only helped me, but it's been an invitation for others to start down their path or continue down their path in similar kinds of ways.
And in business, corporations, schools, media, empathetic leadership is like the new thing.
Yeah.
So now we were just given a little head start.
That's right. We're early adopters, as they say.
When we talk about empathetic leadership, what's that mean to you?
Well, again, I think it means modeling sort of, what you say, or at least I said was best in leadership and in, frankly, being a human in community, right? We want connections. We want, an ability to be authentic and to bring our best selves, but also to be vulnerable enough to identify when we're not our best self or when we're struggling. And, I think whether that's in the workplace or, in other circles that we roam in, my own opinion is that there's not enough of that in the world, that we sort of all present ourselves as tidied up versions and, having it more or less all together. Most of us don't have it all together, or if we do, we won't have it all together for very long. And I think leaders who can sort of embody that in the best sense and invite those they lead to do the same, I think makes for a better organization or a better community, more connected, more loyal, more willing to advocate for one another, support one another, and therefore, a better ability to meet our respective missions, whatever they may be.
What has been the biggest personal challenge to you due to Parkinson's?
Well, for me, so far, it hasn't been physical in nature as much as it has been emotional. And I think, a lot of my struggle early on was sort of getting clear about my identity as a person now living with a chronic illness that progresses over time and that is not terribly understood by the masses, right? I talk a lot in the book and in other places about, the misperceptions that are often in play with Parkinson's and other kinds of chronic illnesses and challenges, mental health issues, et cetera. And so I had to get comfortable with that and, realize that I could still do what I've always done, maybe in some ways better than I've always done them. And I'm going to be facing challenges that along the way are going to, make it harder to do certain things, and that both and are okay, right? And to the extent that I can sort of integrate that and be, open about it, the better I'm going to do, and hopefully those around me are going to do better as well.
We're both parents of kids that are, my kid's preteen, but your kids are a little older, and you've been married just a little bit longer. We've been married 22 years.
Yeah.
But long-term marriages, kids, what are the conversations like with your family, like either at the dinner table or you and your wife when you're laying down at night? What do you talk about?
Yeah, great questions. As I've talked about on my blog and also in the book, the two hardest conversations I ever had were telling my parents first and then telling my children shortly thereafter, who were 10 and 8 at the time. Now they're 15 and 13. And, my fears were that I was not going to be able to be the father to them that I wanted to be, that, plans that we had made that, most parents make might be in need of altering or revisited in some way. And so, trying to sort of get through those fears was very difficult in the beginning. Now with my children, we talk about Parkinson's when we need to. They've really gotten, sort of on board with being advocates and educators. Both of my daughters in school have done, science projects on Parkinson's and other kinds of, community service around Parkinson's. And so it's really become a part of our family practice and our family identity. But it doesn't, it doesn't sort of absorb everything we do as a family. It's not always front and center. We talk about it when we need to. And most of the time we talk about the things that we always talked about before Parkinson's, what's going on in school and friendships and summer vacation and, piano and, dance and, all the things that my kids are interested in. And, with my wife, who's an extraordinary person and, very early on was much more positive about this than I was, and much more, sort of, we've got this, and we're going to, do something good with this, and really encouraging me to live into that. We talk about it, but we don't worry so much about the future. We feel like, we will meet the challenges we need to meet, and that we'll do it together. And, Parkinson's be damned, we're gonna have a good life as we'd always planned. So, and I think, I'm very fortunate in that regard. Tracy, had a lot of experience with Parkinson's as a geriatric social worker professionally before we had it. She was, again, much more sort of grounded early on than I was, and kind of brought me along in those early weeks and months. And so we talk about it when we need to. We all laugh about it, and it may sound, strange, but we've made it something that we can laugh about. Some of the challenges and quirkiness of Parkinson's, and all of that, and I think for us that's healthy, and it reflects who we are as a family.
As you go through life with Parkinson's, and I'm sure you're like me, and you read a lot of articles, and you learn about, like, who knew about Paraquat, like before Parkinson's, I would never even heard of it,
Yeah.
What's been the most surprising thing that you've learned about it, or quirky thing, or like just sort of like, really? Like what sort of made you pull back from a book or an article and go, I had no idea?
Yeah. Well, early on, I really had no idea about the heterogeneity of the disease, right? We talk about it being a snowflake disease or a disease of one. I had no idea that it presents so differently across people, and its rates of progression differ, and it's really more of a sort of cluster of disease processes, we think now, than sort of one single thing. So, on the medical side, that was a big surprise. Another is just how, and you've talked about this in your own work, how extraordinary people with Parkinson's are, and the people around those who have Parkinson's are. And I never would have imagined, Larry, meeting people like you, and people I've met through various organizations that we're both a part of, who are extraordinary people doing extraordinary things, and also ordinary people doing ordinary things, and who are grinding it out, and who are doing it in solidarity with each other, and who are making meaning, and who are living their lives. And so I never would have known that had I not gone down this road, begun this journey, and I'm grateful for that. And maybe the final piece, and this is really important, is how bright the future looks for Parkinson's research, and those of us who are dependent upon that. Like you, I know a lot of people in the medical community. I have a courtesy appointment in the medical school at Dell at UT, and I'm around a lot of docs who know a lot more about this than I ever will. And they're straight shooters, and they say, Allan, we're close. And, in the next decade or so, there are going to be some real game-changing, therapies and biomarkers and other things that help us get out in front of this and stop it, and maybe even reverse some of its effects. And I don't live my life dependent upon that for happiness and joy, but I believe it because people I trust are saying it. And I never would have known that had it not been for the people around me that I've met because of this experience with this disease.
Yeah, I think one of the shockers for me, so the day I was diagnosed, my wife and I went home, and we were like, well, let's just put a movie on. And we put Awakenings on with Robin Williams.
Yeah,
which is actually the story of how they discovered levodopa.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, this is a horrible movie for me to be watching.
Yeah.
The idea that levodopa was discovered so long ago, and it's still the best option we have, is shocking to me.
Yeah. And it's great that we have it, right? I mean, I'm on it, you're on it, as my doc said, everybody eventually goes on it. And it's wonderful. And yet it has its limits. It causes side effects that can be their own problem to manage. And yeah, you would think we would have something better just by virtue of the time that's passed since that was discovered, decades ago. And again, back to the sort of urgency of advocacy and funding and the hard bench science and trials and all the things that have to happen that get us closer to that new breakthrough treatment and something that goes along with carbidopa, levodopa, or maybe makes it obsolete because it's better. We need that.
Yeah, for sure. How do your students react?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I had class this morning before our conversation now, and they're great. I mean, people are great for the most part, and I think I try to sort of put it out there in the beginning, and so people aren't guessing or wondering. Like you, I'm very public, and so if you do any kind of search of me, lots of Parkinson's things are going to come up. It's on my bio on my school website. And so I just try to name the elephant in the room, as we often say in counseling circles, and, invite conversation around it, and then move on and do what we do. And if there's ties back to it, make them and make it an opportunity for learning. Again, as a way of hopefully modeling what I try to tell students is important about authenticity and building resilience in the face of adversity, and the things that I've taught about for decades and written about for decades, and really believe in my DNA are sort of core human values. Trying to set a tone for modeling that and for talking about it when we need to. But they're great. Our students are great, and I learn from them as much as they learn from me. I'm sure, if not more.
I find my colleagues and my employees, when they come across an article about Parkinson's, they send it to me.
Yeah.
I may have seen it, and I may get 50 copies of it, but I'm okay with that because I know that they're thinking about me.
Yeah, I have those experiences too. And again, it's that sort of solidarity piece that, Parkinson's is hard. It has its moments that are really hard. And the longer you live with it, the harder it gets. It doesn't get better, I tell people, right? We can manage it for a long time well. We are getting better at that. There are things we can do to slow it down with exercise and other lifestyle things, but it progresses and it gets harder. And I think, knowing that people are thinking about you and taking the time to send you a note or an email or an article or whatever is really, really meaningful. And I know for you too, having people who treat us like they've always treated us, those same people who send us articles are also the people who, we go out and have a beer with, and it's right. Like it's always been. That's really, really important too. And I think, for me, just to reach back for a moment, worries about being pitied or being treated differently early on were really painful. None of that has come to pass, by the way. And, really none of my fears have been realized. Just the opposite has happened. People have been extraordinary. And little gestures like that really remind me of that.
So I've got two more questions. Number one, are your wife and kids signed up to be PD Avengers? Not yet,
but they will be when we wrap. They will be.
And how many of your students are PD Avengers?
Duly noted, Larry. More of them will be.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. How's that for an answer? Yeah.
This is about making connections and pulling people into it.
Well, and candidly, I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't know until we talked, earlier today about sort of how open membership in that group, is. I'm a member, want to be a more active member. And now I know that others can join the cause, and I'm behind it. I'm on it.
It's going to take everybody.
Yeah, I'm on it.
We can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, so let's pull everybody into it. We need the energy of those college kids.
Yeah, well, they have energy. So do adolescent.
Yes.
Young women. So.
And that generation actually is going to be really critical because, if you think about Parkinson's is going to double from 10 million to 20 million, let's say by 2040.
That's right.
And that's only 19 years away. So most of the people that are going to be diagnosed are already alive. They're living with it. They don't even know it.
That's right.
And the people that are going to be caring for those people are right now 13, 14, 15, 16 years old.
That's right.
Because in 19 years, they'll be in their mid-30s and their parents will be getting Parkinson's and they'll be like, what the hell is this? So they should be advocating harder than anybody, because it's going to take away from their lifestyle, because they're going to have to take care of their parents instead of living out their 30s and 40s.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned all of that, because it's vitally important. It's sobering, but it's also sort of a call to arms and a charge to take up the cause. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, and thank you for being such a great advocate for your blog and for writing the book. And the book is available now at Amazon and everywhere you buy books.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Oxford University Press, anywhere you buy
like
books.
A real book. Like this is not like a Larry book where it's in my head. This is a real book.
Well, I hope it gets in a lot of hands, and ultimately that it's helpful. That's the purpose in writing it. And the book is featured along with a lot of other things on my blog, which is pdwise.com. pdwise.com.
For part 2 of the conversation, we swap sides. Allan takes over as the interviewer, and I become the interviewee.
It's my great pleasure to welcome to PD Wise Larry Gifford. Larry hosts the podcast When Life Gives You Parkinson. Larry also hosts the Michael J. Fox Foundation's Parkinson's podcast, as well as serving on the Foundation's Patient Council. More recently, he founded the Parkinson's advocacy group called PD Avengers, which we will talk about today, and he's an ambassador for the 2022 World Parkinson Congress, which will meet in Barcelona, Spain. Larry is also the National Director of Talk Radio for Chorus Entertainment in Canada. And so we're reversing roles today, and I am interviewing the expert on interviewing. So Larry, welcome to PD Wise. It's a thrill to have you. We look forward to talking with you today.
Allan, thank you. It's a great pleasure, and thanks for all the advocacy work that you do.
It's my pleasure, Larry. Let's start with sort of the beginning. For those who don't know, what is it like to live with Parkinson's disease?
It's kind of like if you've ever been to a amusement park and you've gone down like the gaming aisle and you do whack-a-mole. And you wake up every day and it feels like there's a different symptom that you're trying to figure out how to knock down. You learn to live in the moment because you cannot predict what you're going to be like at any given time. You can manage your meds so you kind of know when your ons and offs are going to be, but really it's about learning how to say no to things, learning how to not feel guilty that you are not able to do something that you've promised you're able to do. It can be a frustrating, exhausting, painful, both emotionally and physically, and it really challenges you to look internally at what your purpose is. Why did I get this disease? Why me? Why now? Why? Yeah. So for me, it continues to be a very internal journey, but one that affects everybody I touch in one way or the other. Whether it impacts my family because they've had to adjust around me, and sometimes we make plans that we have to cancel, or I can't do everything that all the dads can do. I can't, I feel you have to work through that, and then work and friends, and so it's a full-time job managing Parkinson's. Yeah,
I hear you on all of that, and day to day, moment to moment is not predictable, right? As you're saying, you never quite know which mole is going to be bearing its head at the moment. So let's stay on that topic for a moment. What do you do in light of those challenges to, take care of yourself, to manage the many responsibilities you have, family-wise, professionally? One of the things I and many others, admire about you is you're as busy as you've ever been doing meaningful things, but presumably that gets more challenging over time for most people on this road. So how do you manage all of that?
Well, it's hard. I actually, for the WPC virtual Congress coming up, they had me speak on work-life balance, and I thought they were joking. But what I've come to realize is that balance is not something that you can buy at like Staples, pull it off the shelf and go, I'll have some work-life balance here. And it's not anything that anybody can give you. Your employer can't give you work-life balance. You have to make it. And it's not something that you attain and you stay there. It's fleeting. So you're looking for these moments of balance in your life. And sometimes it's about quality of time versus quantity of time. So you have to figure out what are the important things in your life. And so I was going through, I keep a lot of notes, and I have sort of a journal and stuff. And I go back and I look through it every now and again, because there's some wisdom in there if you look back on your life.
Yeah.
And in 2019, I wrote a journal entry called the things to change in my life, to simplify and to be more in the moment. And I realized I was not prioritizing the things that I thought were important. So up the top was me and my health, and that was the thing that was the bottom of the list. I was doing all these other things.
Yeah.
So I've really had to prioritize, okay, so I need to make sure that first and foremost, I'm healthy, and that I'm being taken care of and nourished, and then my family, and then my work, because that's important to support all of us, and then my advocacy. And so making that list and then making sure that it's in balance. And there's, like, this month is April Awareness Month, so Parkinson's Awareness Month, so it's skewed, but I know that. And then it's sort of going back and forth and making sure that you're saying no to things that you can't do in the moment, but maybe I can do it in 2 months, or maybe I can do something else down the line. And it was hard to say no to people, because I want to say yes. I'm a yes guy. But if you're going to be in balance, you actually have to say no as many times as you say yes.
Yeah. And learning sort of that discernment, I think, is really, really key. I mentioned at the outset, you're the national director of talk radio at Chorus. That's a demanding job, to say the least, and requires you to be on a lot of the time, I suspect. And, just for a moment, if I can reflect personally, when I was, not long after I was diagnosed and still really pretty private about it, I found your podcast, and you had a guest on, and I don't remember who she was, but she was a close colleague or coworker, and you were talking very frankly with her, and she with you, about sort of your shared experience of work after your diagnosis. And I was really compelled by that. And I know, as you know, that many folks, particularly young onset folks, really struggle with sort of the professional piece and how to manage that. Do you recall any of that conversation, and just sort of what the tenor of that was that might be helpful to recall?
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to explore that too, because it's a scary area for a lot of people. I mean, when you get the diagnosis for Parkinson's, you're like, am I going to be able to work? Is my work going to want to continue to employ me? And do you want somebody running the national talk radio product who has a degenerative brain disease? It's not really something that you want to put on your LinkedIn profile.
Touche.
So, but I've been very fortunate, and my boss's boss had cancer at an early age, and the company worked with him during his cancer treatments and whatnot. And he's very much an advocate now for bladder cancer and whatnot. So I felt very comfortable going to him and saying, listen, I got this issue that we're dealing with, and we think it's, I don't have an official diagnosis yet, but this is what's happening. And so I brought them in way early, and they've been so kind to me that I think that my experience is different than other people's. And I know other people have been fired from their jobs when they've become clear. And so you really have to, you don't owe it to your employer to tell them anything. You should, if you have questions, you should consult an employment lawyer. And I'm not an employment lawyer, but there are many out there that will be happy to give you that advice. There's great advice online. And it is, for me, it's been really interesting doing the podcast and the company then distributing the podcast and being a supporter of my advocacy and allowing me to do that on company time. And so they are not just allowing me to work, they are supporting me in this journey, which is terrific. And so everybody knows I have Parkinson's at the office. And so it's interesting to talk to them about how that impacts our relationships and how maybe perceptions. And Nikki was my co-host for a long time, and she and I would talk about that quite often. And she's like, if I didn't know, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Because, and I think my inner tremor is really noticeable, or like my lack of word recall is really noticeable, or I get embarrassed if I forget somebody's name. I can't recall it right away. But people are like, I wouldn't know you have Parkinson's unless you told me, or unless So oftentimes I'm on walking poles, and people are like, hey, what's going on? You okay? And that's how they would know. But I think we're very super conscious of what's happening to our bodies because we can feel every twitch.
Yeah.
Most people don't notice.
Yeah, and I think that probably is a tribute as well to you're not letting Parkinson's define you. It's part of your life, and has a great effect on a lot of things, as you said, but it's not all of who you are or what you bring to any community or relationship, or in this case, job. So I think that's great on all of those accounts. Let's stay with your podcast, When Life Gives You Parkinson's. I mentioned it was a great resource for me early on, and continues to be. I always look forward to what drops next. But tell us about how that came into being, and sort of what you do for folks who are not familiar, and
Sure.
The audiences you reach.
Yeah. So When Life Gives You Parkinson's was born out of sort of my coming out story. So I came out on World Parkinson's Awareness Day 2017, or 2018 rather. So the year after I was diagnosed. And I had been listening to the Michael J. Fox podcast, and Ray Dorsey was on there. And he said, if people with Parkinson's don't start sharing their stories, we'll never raise enough awareness to do enough research to get it to find a cure for this. So I thought, well, I'm a storyteller, and I've got access to all radio and TV stations, and a huge web platform and a podcast platform. I've been doing it for 30 years. And if I'm not going to tell my story, I can't expect anybody else to tell their story. So we're all just going to be stuck. So I came out, it had I announced on TV that I had Parkinson's as part of our Parkinson's awareness coverage, and radio and across the country. And then as part of that, we rolled out online like a 20-minute documentary of sort of what it's like to have Parkinson's. And people loved it, and they asked for more. And so that fall, we launched the podcast, and it's been growing ever since. We have about 3,000 subscribers. We're approaching 300,000 downloads over the course of 3 years, and each year seems to have a different theme. So the first year was all about sort of the diagnosis journey and understanding how Parkinson's might impact my life. And the second year was more about from becoming sort of a victim to becoming to owning the disease, and how you do that. And whether it's through humor or whether it's through exercise and fundraising or whatever. And then really this season has been about becoming a leader of advocacy. And so the advocacy is really sort of the through line of this season. Yeah.
Well, it's great. Keep doing it. I mean, I learn something every time I listen, and we would be poor without your voice and those of your guests in the conversation. And you mentioned Ray Dorsey, fabulous human. Ray's a movement disorder specialist and a researcher at the University of Rochester, and I know he's been involved with you in some other efforts too. And so maybe let's move to PD Avengers. Tell us what that's about.
Well, so that also was inspired by Ray and Michael Oken and Boz Bloom and Todd Scherer, who wrote the book Ending Parkinson's Disease.
Yeah.
When that came out last year, I got together a group of folks on Zoom, about 12 of us, and we started talking about the book. And did we agree with the book? And it was kind of like a book club, but and these were people all over the world. Most of them had Parkinson's or were partners or were leaders of organizations. And we probably met for 5 weeks in a row talking about the book and what we agreed with, what we didn't agree with. We had we talked to all 4 of the authors in our little group sessions, and they were very generous with their time. And then we realized at one point, and it was probably when Boz was there because he's really passionate about it. He goes, "We need action. This is a prescription for action. You're just talking about it."
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh, yeah, probably we ought to do something. And the first time we'd met, somebody joked that it felt like a convention of superheroes because everybody was blind copied on the invite. So nobody knew who was going to be there. And so they're showing up, looking around, going, oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah. And sort of seeing your Twitter feed come to life in front of you. So somebody said, yeah, we're like the Avengers. And somebody else said, no, we're like the PD Avengers. And that was like the first meeting. And so that's what we kind of called it in our outlook, not ever thinking that it would be an organization. And then when we realized we wanted to really become an advocacy coalition, we couldn't think of a better name or a more unique name or something that would stand out and really be memorable amongst all these other organizations. And we didn't want it to feel like corporate,
right?
Because it's a patient-led organization. So the PD Avengers, we really worked hard on really trying to hone what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. We're not a fundraising organization. There's a bunch of those. Right. So we'll never ask for our members to fundraise. It's free to sign up. It's for everybody. It's not just for people with Parkinson's and partners, but it's for doctors, neurologists, pharmacists, researchers. We need everybody, family members. We have what is it? The raccoon from the World Parkinson Congress. It's a member of the PD Avengers. Anybody who does advocacy work can be a part of there, whether it's big or small, because with numbers we have power. We have a bigger voice. And in addition to like individual people signing up and saying, yeah, I stand behind your pillars of wellness and advocacy and research, we also have engaged NGOs and organizations that are focused on Parkinson's, making life better for people with Parkinson's, or organizations that do research around Parkinson's, organizations that do wellness around Parkinson's. Everybody from the Michael J. Fox Foundation and the Finney Foundation, and to the Parkinson's UK and the Cure Parkinson's Trust. We just today we now have the Parkinson's Disease Association of Slovenia. So we have over 50 organizations worldwide, and we have 3,000 members from over 62 countries.
Really amazing. And sort of it's still its inception. It's not very old. And I think, again, another tribute to your ability to connect people. When I think of you, I think of someone who's a connector. And
that's my superpower. That's what I bring to the table.
Yeah. And I think to Ray's point and Boss's, sort of charge, I think that's really what's needed more and more is connection. Can you talk briefly about the current sort of campaign with, contacting Congress people and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have a couple campaigns going on. There's the Red Letter campaign that goes to the end of the month in the U.S. The Red Letter campaign is designed to bring attention to the needs of people with Parkinson's to the White House. So we are sending actual red letters, envelopes, to the White House post office. So we've now sent 25,000. So they're stacking up. At some point, hopefully President Biden will walk by and go, what the hell is that? And read it. We are asking for 3 things. We are asking for the Medicare exceptions and for telemedicine during COVID to become permanent. So there's permanent coverage of telemedicine. We're asking for the paraquat and the trichloroethylene and other chemicals that are linked to the increased onset of Parkinson's to be banned. And we're asking the government to increase their research dollars by tenfold in the coming budgets. Right now, they're spending about $240 million a year on Parkinson's research at the federal level, and in the U.S. And in the U.S., the annual financial burden for treating people with Parkinson's is $56 billion.
Yeah.
So if you go to endingpd.org, you can order these red envelopes. We'd like to get 100,000 by the end of the month. The other campaign we have going on right now is I've sent a letter to the United Nations, to the Secretary General and to the President of the General Assembly, and we've encouraged others to send to their ambassadors. The United Nations currently does not observe a World Parkinson's Day or a World Parkinson's Awareness Week. Although the WHO, which is associated with the UN, has determined that Parkinson's disease is a priority, a top 5 priority in the world, and there's not even a dedicated page on their websites for it. Yeah. So I've sent this very kind letter asking them to observe World Parkinson's Day and World Parkinson's Week, and then we're getting that reinforced from the UK, one from the Canary Islands, one from Kenya, one from, they're coming from all over the world to the ambassadors. And so we're really hoping that can get done. So you can look up your ambassador on Google or whatever and send it to their attention at the UN in New York. And hopefully you can even email them if you want. Their email addresses are usually very available. And if you need a copy of that letter, you can go to pdavengers.com and then /blog. And you'll be able to scroll down and see our letter, and you can use that as a template.
And I'll be sure to put those links, on the at the end of the interview and when we post it. So thank you for all of that. And again,
Allan, let me just tell you that the Red Letter campaign won't end there. It's just going to go to different countries.
That's
so
great.
In June, we're going to be focusing on the Red Letter campaign in Canada, and then we're working with other countries around the world. So when there is that need, we can activate that Red Letter campaign.
Well, again, just thank you, and wonderful to hear about this. And I hope everybody will get involved in the ways that they can. I think it's really, really important message. And your 3 things you're asking for seem, quite reasonable and timely. So, thank you for that. What gives you hope, Larry, as you live this life and, enjoy the moment and the present, but also as you look ahead?
I see, I talk to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of leaders of organizations. I talk to a lot of researchers. And I see Parkinson's becoming less of a till death do us part disease. And I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to be able to have a biomarker that will allow us to identify people with Parkinson's before the onset of symptoms, and we will be able to stop it. And that's based on just a lot of conversations I've had. Nobody's promised me anything, but just from the conversations I have had, that seems like a reasonable time frame. Now that's, in 15 years, I'm not going to be great, but I'm not in it for me. And so what gives me hope is that there's so many people that are working on it right now around the world that have dedicated their lives to helping us, even though they have no connection to Parkinson's, and many of them have never met anybody with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And the other thing that gives me hope is when you see how COVID has rallied communities and nations and people across the world, and we're so connected as a global community. And so this is going to sound silly, but these 50 plus organizations that we've pulled together for PD Avengers, part of being a partner is they have all promised once a year, we will form a campaign that is globally relevant and then executed locally. So we are all preaching the same thing at the same time around the world.
Yeah.
No more silos at least for one time a year. Now, to get all those people in the room at the same time, those executives together, so they could look at each other in the eye and go, "Yeah, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in." Like that is like that tells me that we're at the precipice of something really great.
Yeah.
And then I have hope in people. People never cease to amaze me. That from my son and my wife to my family to my friends to total strangers who reach out and just say thanks for what you do. It's there's so much to be grateful for in this world, and oftentimes we focus on the negative.
Yeah.
But the positives, the silver linings of Parkinson's is I get to meet great people like you.
Well, back at you. And I again, just really appreciate all that you do and everything that you say and the connections that you help me make and many others make along the way. So final question for us today. If you could go back and say one thing to your newly diagnosed self, knowing what you know now, what would that be?
So if you want to read a big long version of this, it's if you go to the Parkinson's Society of British Columbia website. I did this for this month. I actually wrote a letter to my newly diagnosed self. What I would say is enjoy the slowness, take in being at a new pace. Laugh a lot, be curious, ask questions, don't take things at face value, don't believe your life is over because it's just beginning. Yeah.
Well said, as usual. Well, Larry, thank you for your time. Wish we had longer, but we'll have you back many times, I hope. And know that you're appreciated and you make an impact on many people's lives, mine included, in ways that you probably never know. But keep doing this good work, my friend. And again, it's just an honor to know you and appreciate your time.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much for all you do. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, pal. Take care.
See you. Ah, that was fun. This is When Life Gives You Parkinson's, a Curious Cast podcast. Our story producer is Dila Velazquez, our sound design by Greg Schott. The presenting partner is Parkinson Canada. Diagnosed with Parkinson's? You're not alone. Parkinson.ca. Be sure to check out their No Matter What campaign for April's Parkinson's Awareness Month. Thanks also to our promotional partners, PD Avengers, a global alliance of people with Parkinson's, our partners and friends, standing together demanding change in how the disease is seen and treated. Join now at pdavengers.com. It's free. We'll never ask you to raise money. Go there now, pdavengers.com. The Michael J. Fox Foundation Parkinson's Podcast, hosted by me, Larry Gifford, available on Apple Podcasts and at michaeljfox.org. Spotlight YOPD, the only organization in the world with a singular focus of raising awareness of young-onset Parkinson's disease. Find them at spotlightyopd.org. And the World Parkinson Congress 2022 in Barcelona, Spain. I cannot wait. The 2021 WPC Virtual, the first ever virtual, is in May. It's coming up quick. Access amazing talks, including my own, on how to have a work-life balance as a YOPD with a family and a career. Go to WPC2022.org for details. Tickets just $25. You get a lot of content for $25. Go ahead and register today. And thank you for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, give the show a 5-star rating and feel free to comment. You can also engage with us on social media. It's at Parkinson's Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or email us parkinsonspod@curiouscast.ca. Keep positive, keep exercising, keep listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Canada may be known for its landscapes and friendly people, but beneath the surface lies a darker side of crime, history, and the paranormal. Since 2017, the award-winning Dark Poutine podcast has explored the shadowy corners of the Great White North and beyond, delivering chilling tales from a uniquely Canadian perspective. Hosted by Mike Brown and Matthew Stockton with over 300 episodes and fresh releases every Monday, Dark Poutine is your weekly ticket to the creepier side of Canada. Listen to Dark Poutine on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts.